Hi, for this video we're going to solve a rational equation using U-substitution. This is a very special type of rational equation. This one happens to be in quadratic form, so we can use a U-substitution. You can't always do this. The reason that this is a rational equation is because of the fact that we have a negative exponent, and just remember or recall that x minus 1 to the negative 1 power is really 1 over x minus 1, which makes it rational. So for this particular equation, if we ended up, the domain is all numbers except for x equals 1. So if we ended up with x equals 1 as our answer, remember that that does not work. Because if you plug it in, you would have 0 in the denominator, and that is undefined. So with this one, if you look at this, my middle term right here, if I were to take this and I would square this value, I would end up with the x minus 1 to the negative 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a U substitution. I'm going to let u equal x minus 1 to the negative 1 power. And by doing that, what I can do is I can replace the x minus 1 to the negative 1 power into my equation. And this first part right here, this is really x minus 1 to the negative 1 power squared. So because I can rewrite it like that, what I'm going to do is, instead of having this, which is more complicated, I am going to rewrite this as u squared plus u minus 12 equals 0. And now we have a very, very simple quadratic equation that we can solve, because we're just looking for two numbers that multiply together to give me negative 12 that add up to be positive 1. So with this, because of the fact that this one is negative and this is positive, that tells me I need a positive and a negative here. And the positive number must be larger because I want a positive difference. So with this, the two numbers that multiply together to give me negative 12 are 4 and 3. That also add up to be positive 1, because 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. And 4 plus negative 3 gives me positive 1. So with this, we can say that u is either going to be negative 4 or u is going to be positive 3. Remember, we're not solving for u, we're solving for x. So what we have to do is we do have to go back and replace this part right here back into our answer. So I would say that x minus 1 to the negative 1 power equals negative 4, or x minus 1 to the negative 1 power equals positive 3. So now we have two equations that we have to solve, and with this it's easier to rewrite it in the form that I was talking about before. So I'm going to rewrite this as 1 over x minus 1 equals negative 4. I'm going to rewrite the other one. I'm just going to solve these simultaneously. You can do one at a time, whatever makes the most sense for you. With this, what we're going to do is we're going to solve this by cross multiplying. So I'm basically just going to take, this is really negative 4 over 1, so I'm going to multiply those two together and multiply these two together. So I really have negative 4 times x minus 1 equals 1. So if I solve this equation, I get negative 4x plus 4 equals 1. We would then subtract this 4 from both sides, and we end up with negative 4x equals negative 3. So our first answer is x equals positive 3/4, because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. Our second answer, we would do the same thing with this equation. We would have 3 times x minus 1 equals 1. So 3x minus 3 equals 1. If I add the 3 to the other side, we would end up with 3x equals 4 and x equals 4/3. Remember that you always want to check your equations, because of the fact that we have something that is a very complicated equation, as well as answers that are fractions. I suggest using a calculator to plug this in. You can replace the 3/4, just make sure you put them in parentheses, or you can use what I like, the ti-nspire and the ti-84. Calculators both allow you to store values. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 3 divided by 4, and I'm going to store that in for x. So now anytime I type in x, the calculator is going to plug in 3/4. And then what I can do is I can just take and plug in my equation exactly how it was. So the x minus 1 to the negative 1 power, or sorry, that was to the negative 2 power. plus x minus 1. Be very careful about putting in parentheses and make sure you get your signs and everything correct. To the negative 1 power. Whoops. To the negative 1 power. Minus 12, and we want to see if this equals 0. So if I hit enter, it does give me 0. So we do see that the first answer does work. So we can say that this one definitely works. This is a verified solution. And we want to check the other one. So I'm going to just do the same thing. So with this, what I would do is instead of having the 3/4, I would just store the 4/3. Control store for x. And then instead of having to retype the whole equation in, we can just go back up here and grab it and hit enter. And we see that that also gives us 0. So this is also a verified solution. So the solution to the problem is the set of numbers 3/4, 4/3. As always, thanks for watching. If there is content that you need help with, if there's topics that you're struggling in math or in algebra or statistics, just please let me know and I will make sure to do a video on that. As always, thanks for watching.